There is a community living right now that has rules that would make most people's jaws drop. Rules that, if you posted them on social media, would generate 10,000 outrage comments within the hour. Rules about what you can wear, who you can talk to, what music you can listen to, whether you are allowed to take a photograph, and in some cases, whether you are even permitted to use a rubber tire. These are not ancient historical practices from a civilization that no longer exists. These are the active, enforced daily rules of over 350,000 Amish people living across the United States and Canada right now, today. And the deeper you go into what these rules actually are, where they come from, and why the Amish follow them with a level of commitment that most people reserve for nothing at all, the more complicated and genuinely interesting the picture becomes. The Amish live by a code called the Ordnung. That word is German, and it translates roughly to order or discipline. The Ordnung is not a written document in most communities. It is not a constitution or a legal code. It is an unwritten set of expectations, traditions, and community standards that governs virtually every aspect of daily life. And it is transmitted not through text, but through observation, upbringing, and community enforcement. It varies from settlement to settlement and from district to district, which is why there is no single monolithic Amish rulebook that applies everywhere. But across all of them, there are patterns. There are rules that appear in virtually every Amish community in some form that shape daily life in ways that the outside world finds genuinely hard to process. Here are 14 of them. The first one sounds simple until you think about it carefully, and then it becomes one of the most philosophically loaded rules on this entire list. The Amish in most traditional communities are not allowed to be photographed, not by outsiders, not by each other, not at all. The religious foundation for this rule comes from the biblical commandment against graven images, the concern that creating a likeness of a person elevates the individual above the community, and in some interpretations above God. But the practical and cultural meaning of the rule goes deeper than its religious origin. The Amish are a community built on humility. The concept they use is Gelassenheit, a yielding of the self to God, to community, and to the collective will. Individual portraiture in that context is not just a harmless snapshot. It is a statement of individual importance. It says this person is worth capturing, worth preserving, worth looking at. That is precisely the kind of self-elevation that the Amish Ordnung exists to prevent. The result is a community of hundreds of thousands of people who have lived and died for generations, leaving almost no visual record of themselves as individuals. That is not a small thing. That is a fundamentally different relationship with identity, ego, and time. The second rule is the one about buttons, and it genuinely surprises people every time. Traditional Amish clothing does not use buttons, not because buttons are unavailable, obviously they are, but because historically, in the communities from which the Amish descend, buttons were associated with military uniforms and therefore with pride, vanity, and the glorification of violence. Amish clothing is fastened with hooks and eyes, straight pins, or in some communities, simple snaps. The specific fastening method varies by district, but the underlying principle is consistent. The appearance of the clothing should not draw attention, should not signify status, and should not connect the wearer to worldly vanity or military culture. If you think this sounds like an overreach over something as trivial as a button, consider that every culture makes arbitrary distinctions in clothing that carry enormous social weight. The Amish distinction is just honest about where it comes from. The third rule is one that strikes most outsiders as the strangest of all, and it is the one about rubber tires. In many traditional Amish farming communities, tractors are permitted for field work, but only if they run on steel wheels rather than rubber tires. At first, this seems completely arbitrary, but the logic behind it is characteristically Amish in its precision. A tractor on steel wheels can work the fields, but cannot easily drive on roads. That limitation keeps it from becoming a substitute for the horse and buggy as the primary means of transportation. The Amish permit certain technologies for specific, limited purposes while preventing those same technologies from expanding into domains that would undermine community cohesion, family proximity, and the pace of life they have chosen. The steel wheel rule is not about the rubber, it is about containment. It is about making sure that permitting a tractor for ploughing does not become, by incremental steps, permitting a car for everything. The Amish understand something that modern technologists rarely acknowledge, that technologies do not stay in their lanes. They expand, they reshape behaviour, they create new dependencies. The steel wheel is a firewall. The fourth rule is about facial hair, and it is more nuanced than most people realise. Amish men are required to grow beards after marriage, full, unshaven beards that they maintain for the rest of their lives. But they are not permitted to grow moustaches, ever. The beard signals married status, maturity and community standing. The absence of the moustache is historical. Moustaches were associated in Europe with military officers and cavalrymen, particularly in the Germanic regions from which the Amish descend. For a community built on pacifism as a core theological principle, adopting the grooming style of soldiers was theologically unacceptable. So Amish men today grow beards without moustaches for the same reason Amish clothing has no buttons. The rule is a rejection of military culture, encoded in daily personal practice, and worn on the face for everyone to see. The fifth rule is the one that causes the most controversy when outsiders learn about it, and it is called shunning. When an Amish person is baptised into the church as an adult, and this is always an adult choice made after the period called Rumspringa, they make a lifelong commitment to the community and its rules. If they subsequently leave or are found to be in serious violation of the Ordnung, the community practices Maidung, or shunning. Shunning means that baptised members of the community are required to severely limit social contact with the person who has left or been excommunicated. In the strictest communities, this means not eating at the same table, not doing business together, and in some cases, not speaking directly. For communities built on intense, daily, multi-generational social proximity, where your neighbours are your cousins, are your business partners, are your church members, shunning is not a minor social sanction. It is close to complete social death. Family members who remain in the community are required to limit contact with a shunned sibling or child. Parents may see their adult child only under restricted conditions. This is the rule that generates the most outrage from the outside world, and not without reason. But it is worth understanding its internal logic. Shunning is the enforcement mechanism of a voluntary community. The Amish argue, not entirely without coherence, that a community of shared values can only remain a community if those values are maintained. The exit is always available. The Rumspringa period exists specifically to ensure that the commitment is informed and chosen. What is not negotiable, once that choice is made, is the community's right to enforce its own standards. The sixth rule is about electricity, and the nuance here matters. The Amish do not reject electricity because they think it is evil. Many Amish communities use electricity, generated from their own solar panels or diesel generators, for specific purposes. What they reject is connection to the public electrical grid, and the reason is not technological, it is social. A home connected to the grid is a home connected to the world, to its entertainment, its information streams, its consumer economy, its pace, and its values. The grid is not just a power source, it is a pipeline through which the outside world enters the home. Disconnecting from the grid is, in the Amish framework, disconnecting from the primary mechanism through which worldly influence enters and reshapes community life. Whether you agree with the conclusion or not, the analysis is not wrong. The seventh rule is one that most people find unexpectedly moving when they understand it fully. The Amish do not carry life insurance. This is not an oversight. It is a deliberate theological and communal position. Life insurance in the Amish framework implies a lack of trust, both in God's provision and in the community's willingness to support its members in times of need. When an Amish family faces a catastrophic loss, a barn fire, a serious illness, a death, the community responds. Hundreds of people show up, They rebuild the barn in a day. They bring food for months. They contribute financially. The community is the insurance policy, and it has a claims rate of 100% because it never fails to respond. The practical effectiveness of this system is not theoretical. Amish barn raisings are not a charming cultural tradition. They are a functional mutual aid network that has been operating continuously and reliably for centuries, with no premiums, no exclusions, and no claim denials. The 8th rule is about higher education, and it is the one that has been to the United States Supreme Court. The Amish do not send their children to school beyond the 8th grade, which ends around age 13 or 14. The Supreme Court ruled in Wisconsin v. Yoder in 1972 that this practice was protected under the First Amendment's guarantee of religious freedom, in a landmark decision that still stands. The Amish argument is that formal schooling beyond the primary years introduces values, social frameworks, and ambitions that are incompatible with Amish community life, and that the education provided by working on the farm and in the community from age 14 onward is more practically comprehensive and more morally sound than anything a high school curriculum offers. You may disagree with this, but it is worth noting that Amish communities produce virtually no unemployment, no homelessness, no drug addiction epidemic, and no retirement crisis. Outcomes that the educationally credentialed mainstream society has not managed to achieve. The 9th rule is about music, and it is one of the more misunderstood ones. The Amish do not ban music, they sing. They sing a great deal, actually, slow, unaccompanied hymns from a collection called the Ausbund, which is the oldest continuously used Christian hymnal in the world, first published in 1564. What they prohibit is instrumental music, recorded music, and music consumption as entertainment. The distinction they draw is between music as communal worship, voices lifted together in praise, and music as individual entertainment or emotional stimulation. One builds community, the other builds the individual's internal world at the expense of community presence. Whether that distinction is correct is debatable. That it is a distinction with a coherent philosophical foundation is not. The 10th rule is one that trips people up every time because it involves something as apparently harmless as owning a car versus riding in one. In most Amish communities, members are not permitted to own or operate motor vehicles, but they are permitted to ride in them as passengers. They can accept a ride from a non-Amish neighbour, they can hire a driver for longer trips, they can take a taxi. They simply cannot own the car themselves. To an outside observer, this distinction looks like a loophole, a way of having the convenience while maintaining the pretense of the rule. But the Amish distinction is again more precise than it appears. Owning a car fundamentally changes your relationship with distance, with community, with time, and with the radius of your daily life. It makes the next town as accessible as the next farm. It makes the world large. Riding occasionally in someone else's car does not produce the same effect. The Ordnung is not trying to make cars physically unavailable. It is trying to prevent the car from reshaping the community's relationship with space and proximity. Ownership is the mechanism of that reshaping. The rule targets the mechanism. The 11th rule is about conflict resolution, and it is one that the outside world has perhaps the most to learn from. The Amish do not sue each other. They do not use the legal system to resolve disputes within the community. When a conflict arises over land, over a business arrangement, over a perceived wrong, it is brought before the church leadership and resolved through mediation, confession, and community process. The legal system, in the Amish view, is an outside authority whose intervention in internal community matters is a failure of community, an admission that the bonds of relationship and shared values were insufficient to resolve the dispute. The practical result is that Amish communities almost never appear in civil court against each other. Disputes that would generate years of litigation and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees in mainstream society are resolved in a meeting room within the community, usually within weeks. There is a lesson buried in there somewhere about the cost of outsourcing human relationships to institutional processes. The 12th rule is about telephones, and like the car rule, it contains a distinction that is finer than it appears. Traditional Amish communities do not permit telephones inside the home, but they frequently permit a shared telephone, a community phone, often housed in a small shed at the edge of a property or at the road, that members can use for necessary calls. The telephone is not evil. It is not forbidden because communication is forbidden. It is kept outside the home because a telephone inside the home changes the home. It makes the home permeable to outside voices, outside requests, outside schedules, outside emergencies, and outside relationships at any hour of any day. The home, in the Amish framework, is the primary sanctuary of family and community life. The telephone at the road's edge is available when genuinely needed, but it does not ring during dinner. It does not interrupt family evenings. It does not establish an expectation of perpetual availability. If you have ever sat at a dinner table where every person present was checking their phone, you understand, viscerally, what the Amish understood abstractly, that the device in the home changes what the home is. The 13th rule is one that is softening in many communities, but remains strong in the most traditional ones. The prohibition on games and sports that involve competition between Amish individuals or teams against outsiders. The concern is not that physical activity is wrong. Amish communities play games. They participate in physical recreation, but competitive sports, particularly against non-Amish opponents, are seen as vehicles for pride, individual glory, community division, and the elevation of the exceptional at the expense of the collective. An Amish child who becomes a celebrated athlete becomes something the community does not want to create. An individual whose identity and status are built on standing apart from the group. In a community whose entire social architecture is built on uniformity, humility, and collective identity, the star athlete is a structural problem regardless of how harmless the sport itself appears. The 14th rule is perhaps the most quietly radical of all, and it is one that the Amish have never needed to articulate as a rule, because it is so embedded in their culture that it functions as a reflex. The Amish do not retire. There is no Amish retirement age, no Amish pension system, no Amish equivalent of moving to Florida at 65 and spending your remaining years on leisure. When an Amish farmer or craftsman reaches an age where the main farm work becomes too physically demanding, a younger generation takes over the primary operations and the older person moves into a smaller adjacent home, called the Großstadi house or grandfather house, that is typically built directly onto or very near the main farmhouse. They continue contributing to the household and community in the ways that their age and health permit. They remain embedded in daily family life, in community life, in useful work. They are never warehoused. They are never isolated. They are never made to feel that their productive years are behind them and that they now exist as a burden to be managed. The Großstadi house is not a retirement solution. It is a statement about what old age is supposed to look like. Present, embedded, valued and contributing until the very end. 14 rules. Some of them are genuinely strange. Some of them are genuinely harsh. Some of them, when you pull them apart and look at the logic underneath, turn out to be addressing real problems that the modern world has not solved any better despite all its freedom and all its technology. The Amish did not design these rules to frustrate outsiders. They designed them, or more accurately, they inherited and maintained them to protect something they consider more valuable than convenience, more valuable than comfort, and more valuable than the approval of a world that has been cancelling things at high speed while quietly losing the ones that matter most. Whether that trade-off is worth it is a question only the people making it can answer, but it is worth asking. If this made you think differently about a community you thought you already understood, hit the like button and subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from. And the next video goes even deeper into the world that most people walk past without ever stopping to look at properly.